The term United States, when used in a geographical sense, means any state of the United States, the District of Columbia, Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, and any possession of the United States and any waters within the jurisdiction of the United States. Okay, so when they say, if you look here, it says any state of the United States, what they're saying is it's basically double speak. Okay, because any state of the United States, and then they're listing all the states of the United States. Okay, that's exactly what they're doing. Okay, there's any state of the United States, and then those are all the states. And that's not Texas, it's not Arizona. I've been into the Supreme Court numerous times, and that's what I tell them, and then nobody ever comes back and says anything else, because that's the truth. And again, what it comes down to is, remember, ad justum generis. Okay, and it doesn't even have the word includes. And so again, they're talking about United States, which is the District of Columbia and the territories. That's it. Nothing else. Matter of fact, I'm getting ready to file a lawsuit against the U.S. Border Patrol or U.S. Customs because they violated my rights under the color of law. Again, remember, Title VI, that's in Title VI. There we go. That's Title VI. Okay, so that's not positive law. And that's evidence that it's not positive law, because a lot of times you can find it in their own definitions. Okay, so it's not positive law. It doesn't affect we the people. Remember, Title VI is non-positive law, so it's prima facie evidence. It's color of law, right? And you look in the definitions, and you can see it in the definitions too. This is the term state, means any state of the United States, the District of Columbia, a Commonwealth. It's basically the same thing again. But that's a restatement. Any state is the District of Columbia, Guam, American Samoa, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, Mariana Islands. Do you know it's a felony to claim you're a U.S. citizen when you're not? Okay, so when you tell them, and I can show you court cases to say that U.S. citizen doesn't exist. Okay, so if you claim you're a U.S. citizen, then you're committing a felony, because there's no U.S. citizens. A U.S. citizen is IBM. Okay, that's a U.S. citizen. I shouldn't say there's no U.S. citizens. A U.S. citizen's IBM, GM. Okay, those are all U.S. citizens. We can presume they know the law, either that or their supervisors have perjured their oath. Officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional right, for they're deemed to know the law. Supreme Court. They have no right to charge a fee. Congress shall make no law abridging the right of the people to petition the government for redress of grievances, and that's one of the arguments I use when I file my lawsuits and don't pay filing fees. I just filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, and I didn't pay any filing fees, and consistently they accept it without paying filing fees. I've been to the Supreme Court 3 times and didn't pay filing fees. And I expect that they'll do the same thing this time. And I'm getting ready to file a lawsuit against the U.S. Customs, because they unlawfully arrested me and did all sorts of stuff when I went across the border last time. But again, you have to be prepared to do it, okay? And actually, I'm attaching that criminal complaint that against Janet Napolitano, okay, which you're seeing. I'm attaching it to the lawsuit. Anyways, they have no right to do anything to us except by common law. Okay? No person shall be tried with life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's in Article 5. Now, that's not in the Fifth Amendment. Okay? It's called Article 5 in Amendment. Now, words, again, are everything. If you say it's in the Fifth Amendment, then you're talking about a corporate charter. Okay? There's 2 constitutions. Okay? One is a corporate charter. One is the We the People document, actually, that I've heard recently that it should be called. It's called the We the People document. And it's called Article 5 in Amendment. Okay? That's how it's, if you look in the Constitution, that's what it's called. And I have a certified copy of a 1819 U.S. Constitution that has a 13th Amendment in it too. If anybody wants that, I can send it to them. Okay? That was acquired here in Texas. and it's taken from Texas Archives, and I can't remember the name of the city or town, but anyways, that was acquired here in Texas. It's a certified copy, and what it has a 13th Amendment, and the 13th Amendment makes it so that bar members cannot hold any office of trust, and an office of trust is one that requires an oath of office, right? And yet you see that all the time. Okay, well, that's evidence they're de facto. Okay, they don't have any authority. Matter of fact, they've lost their U.S. citizenship is what's happened. And so you can actually say that and this is one of my latest arguments, we'll see how it goes. I tell them that I'm a U.S. citizen not as defined by the 14th Amendment, because the 14th Amendment turned it all upside down. And the 14th Amendment's actually revision. Okay, because it changes all sorts of things in the Constitution. And so the 14th Congress doesn't have the authority to revise the Constitution. And so the 14th Amendment, and because the 14th Amendment's a revision, it's a nullity. It doesn't exist. And I've got court cases to talk about that too. And so we'll see how that goes, but that's my latest argument. If I am a U.S. citizen, it's not as defined by the so-called 14th Amendment. It's as contemplated by the Founding Fathers. And so we'll see how that goes. Anyways, so the point is, though, is it says the Article 5 of the amendment says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So then what's due process of law? And this is taken from Taylor versus Porter, which is a New York Supreme Court. The phrase law of the land means common law. Lord Coke in his commentary upon this statute says these words by the law of the land mean due course and process of law. Okay, so that's process of law, due course and process of law. And so, which he afterward explains to be by indictment and presentment of good and lawful men where such deeds are done in due manner or by writ original of the common law. So they have no authority to do anything to you but by a jury of your peers. And if you're not a U.S. citizen, well, that's the perfect way to sabotage them. I know of people that have done this, where they'd say, I'm not a U.S. citizen, I'm a citizen of Oregon or whatever, and I demand a jury of my peers. And then they say, okay. And so then they bring him into trial, and they have the jury, and then he says, well, I'd like to ask the jurors some questions. And so then he says to the first jury, he says, are you a U.S. citizen? And the guy says, yes. And then he says, well, I want him disqualified because he's a U.S. citizen and I'm not a U.S. citizen. So he's disqualified, and he just goes down the list, and basically, and then it doesn't take too many, 2 or 3 of them, and then the judge says, well, are you going to do this with all of them? And yeah. And so then the judge says, well, you're all excused now, and then he says to the county sheriff, can you get 12 state citizens in here? And the county sheriff says, well, I'll sort of give it a try. And so 2 weeks later, they call them up and they say, we can't find 12 state citizens, so I guess this case has been dismissed. So anyways, I've heard of that happening, But again, you have to do it at the right time, okay? Even at common law, if you have an issue, if you have something you can bring up and you don't do it at the proper time, you forever lose that opportunity, and there's a court case that talks about that too, okay? So again, we'll talk about this. So let's keep moving. The phrase law of the land in chapter 29 means common law, okay? Chapter 29 of the Magna Carta, talking about. To be the statutes which would deprive a citizen of the rights of person or property without a regular trial according to course and usage of common law would not be the law of the land, okay? In other words, law of the land is not some statute. And this is one of the thing that a lot of people don't understand about the law is they think, well, the statute that says that I have to do that, that's the law of the land. Well, sorry. I've had people, and this is one thing that just makes my blood boil, and that's one reason I don't go to church too much anymore, is because I go into church and you get some brain-dead idiot that gets up and says, did you follow the law of the land today and follow the speed limits? The law of the land has nothing to do with speed limits. And so the law of the land says I can't damage someone, okay, and cause injury to them. And that's what the law of the land says. And the law of the land says that I'm responsible for my actions. And so I accept responsibility for my actions, and I'm going to try and make sure I don't damage anybody. But as far as speed limits are concerned, that has nothing to do with me. And that even says it in Texas codes. I can show you in Texas codes that speed limits are only for commercial vehicles, bus drivers and truck drivers and stuff like that. And it says right in their codes. Matter of fact, that's why the Texas police officers, they stop you. They say, I got you doing, like they did out in West Texas with me. They said, I got you doing 87 and an 80. Do you have some reason for that? That's the reason they say that. Do you have some reason for that? Because if you're not, and the proper answer is, well, I'm not a bus driver, truck driver. So what's that got to do with me? And it says it right in their own codes. And I can show you. I got it. Right here. I think it's in all these up here, but it's in section 201.904, speed signs. The department shall erect and maintain on the highways and roads of this state appropriate signs that show the maximum lawful speed for commercial vehicles, tractors, truck trailers, truck semi-trailers, and motor vehicles engaged in the business of transporting passengers for compensation or hire. And then in brackets it says buses. Okay, so where does that say anything about living souls traveling on the public highways, going to work or traveling from work, or it doesn't say anything about any of that stuff, okay? And all you got to do is point that out to the cop, and all of a sudden, you know, and then the next question is, so under what authority are you unlawfully arresting me? You know, and that'd be where I'd be going with it. But anyways, so the point is that they know the law, and we just need to start educating ourselves. And the important thing is that you know, there's literally millions of these codes, rules, and regulations out there. And this is one reason I like doing what I do. Because I don't need to know all those millions of codes, rules, and regulations. All I need to do is go in there and look up a few of them and figure out that none of it applies to me. And so then none of it applies to me, and what are you bothering me for? Capitis diminutio, meaning the diminishing of status through the use of capitalization. This is Roman law, okay? This is what you're seeing all over. This is Roman law that's coming up all over the place, okay? I saw that. Thank you. Anyways, a diminishing or abridgment of personality, a loss or curtailment of a man's status or aggregate of legal attributes and qualifications. So that's capitis diminutio. Now, we'll talk about some different types of capitis diminutio. This is capitis diminutio minima, meaning a minimum loss of status through the use of capitalization. I guess, you know, you see a lot of people that don't even capitalize the first letter in their name, and I guess this is the rationale for it. The lowest or least comprehensive degree of loss of status. This occurred where a man's family relations alone were changed. It happened upon the arrogation or pride of a person who had been his own master of his own right, not under any legal disability, or upon the emancipation of one who has been under the patria potestas. It left the rights of liberty and citizenship unaltered. So that's minima. Media, this is what you see in Canada a lot, meaning the medium loss of status through the use of capitalization. The last name is capitalized. In Canada you'll see they'll do the last name first, and then the rest of it will be upper and lower case. A lesser or medium loss of status. This occurred where a man loses his rights of citizenship, but without losing his liberty. It carried away also the family rights. There's capitis diminutio maxima, meaning maximum loss of status through the use of capitalization. It's all block capital letters. That's, if you look on the straw man's driver's license, that's exactly what you'll see. The highest or most comprehensive loss of status. This occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage. When he became a slave, it swept away with it all rights of citizenship and family rights. Okay, so that's what's on that driver's license, is a slave. And when you pull that thing out, and that's why I tell them I don't have one, because think about it, I don't. That's a straw man. That's that fictitious entity. My name's not spelt like that, so I don't have one. He didn't ask for the straw man's driver's license. He asked for mine. I don't have one. I'm not required to have one. The only time I ever pull that thing out is if I want to rent a car. Otherwise, I don't even have it here. It's at home in my briefcase. I don't even carry it with me. Okay, we have no more right to decline the exercise of jurisdiction which is given than to usurp that which is not given. One or the other would be treason to the Constitution. In other words, if they try and impose their jurisdiction on you, that's treason. Okay? And they know it. If they try and impose their jurisdiction, and they do it all the time, if you think about it. I have seen court cases that say they have to have the appearance of justice. Remember, some of those definitions under color of law had the appearance or semblance of law. Okay? Well then, appearance of justice, think about it, it's something that looks like justice but isn't. Right? Isn't that what it is? And the reason it's not is because it's not a jury of your peers. It's before a judge alone. Okay? A judge doesn't have any authority over we the people. It's only a jury of our peers. We use color of money to purchase color of justice, to get color of title for our land and our vehicles. Do we really own anything? Everything is in fraud. It's like Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company makes rules and regulations for their employees. Does that mean anything to you? What happens when you get involved in the internal rules and regulations for Ford Motor Company? I guess they view like you agreed it. You agreed to it then, don't they? Are you a person? A person is a variety of entities other than human beings. A person is foreigners and not citizens. In common uses, the term person does not include the sovereign, and in statutes employing the word are normally construed to exclude it. You know, there's a guy by the name of James Turk that sued the U.S. government because they were manipulating the price of gold. This was back in the 90s, okay? And I don't know if you're familiar with that. Are you familiar with that? This is GATA, Gold Antitrust Committee or something like that. Anyways, they sued the U.S. government because they were using the Exchange Stabilization Fund to manipulate the price of gold and keep the value of the dollar up. Anyways, you know what the U.S. government's response to that was? The response was that the Antitrust Act doesn't apply to the government. That's true. It doesn't.
Wow.
And it doesn't apply to we the people either.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A sovereign is not a person in a legal sense. So they admitted essentially by saying that yeah, we're doing that, but it doesn't apply to us. We can go ahead and do it all we want. A sovereign is not a person in a legal sense. Sovereign is not a person as far as the statute is concerned. Sovereigns have the right to travel on the public highway with their private property and are not subject to regulation in any way. I've heard about truck drivers in California, tractor trailer drivers that have their own plate on their truck, and what they do is they buy their load at point A and travel with their tractor trailer with their load to point B, and then they sell it, and everybody's happy. Nobody has a problem with that. Because they own it's their private property. It's not for hire. When you're doing it for hire, it's subject to regulation. Okay? Remember what, and we will probably cover this. Unimpaired sovereigns have unimpaired access to the first 8 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Subjects do not have access to the first 8 amendments to what Congress might grant, except what Congress might grant. This is Title 18, United States Code, Section 31. The term motor vehicle means every description of carriage of other contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power and used for commercial purposes on the highways in the transportation of passengers and property or cargo. And the term used for commercial purposes means the carriage of persons or property for any fare, fee, rate, charge, or other consideration. Okay, so if you're traveling to and from work, you're not involved in commerce. I mean, nobody here is involved in commerce, quite frankly, unless you think you are. I guess if you think you are, then you are. I'm not. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, at the same time how his creatures and servants at first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. Let a state be considered as subordinate to the people, and let everything else be subordinate to the state. And that's 1795, Chisholm versus Georgia. And isn't that true? Same time how his creatures at first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. I mean, do you think anything has changed? This is in 1795. This is exactly what they were going through, and we're going to go through a little bit about that, about the causes and necessities for taking up arms and the Declaration of Independence, and we're going to see some of that stuff. In order for a member of the sovereignty to become subject to regulation in any way, they must agree to it. As with any contract, it must be knowing, willing, and intentional. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Anytime you get anything from the government, it's an implied contract and brings you into their jurisdiction. In other words, when I say get anything from the government, that means when you go and ask for something, then it's an implied contract. You're going and begging. Please, sir, can I have some more? You know, these in Canada, they're so used to being slaves. They'll sit there and say, I'm the king, but then they'll say, and we beg the court to please help us with that. Well, if you're the king, you don't beg, okay? You demand, okay? And so you can't sit there and say both things at the same time. It's I demand, okay? Like in my lawsuit that I just filed with the U.S. District Court, I put myself down as the demandant, okay? And they're respondents, the opposing party are respondents. And I put myself, the demandant says this, and the demandant says that, and the demandant says this. Okay, yeah, that's how I put it down, absolutely. I hereby demand this relief, okay? And I'm the king. I'm a sovereign living soul. I put myself down there, and that's the way I go in there. And who knows, you know? It's a crapshoot at the best of times, so, you know, and I don't care. I guarantee you, no matter what the issues I brought up, some people are going to get slapped, and in this case, I'll bet you some people wind up in jail. But so no matter what happens, I may not get to be a millionaire, but and I might be. Who knows? Actually, I'm asking for. Because it was with a contract actually, where they fired me for not producing a Social Security number, and so in Title 42, United States Code Section 408, it's a felony to compel the disclosure of a Social Security number. So they fired me for not producing a Social Security number. So I'm asking for 2 years' pay, which is about $375,000, and then I'm asking for $5 million in punitive damages. So you know, we'll see what happens. Maybe I won't have to work anymore, you know. You know, the thing is that I've seen court cases where if you ask for $1 million and the jury awards you $5 million, well, you only ask for $1 million, so that's all you get. Yeah, that's true. So it's better to ask for more than what you think you're going to get. You know what I mean? And if I get more than $5 million, you know, I'll be happy with $5 million, I suppose. You know. Anyways. Anytime you get anything from the government, you do not ask them for anything. Nothing. The king doesn't go to the government for welfare or unemployment insurance or any of that stuff. Anytime you register for anything or make application for anything from the government, you're giving them a power of attorney to make legal determinations for you and represent you. Think about it. You know, when that cop stops you, he's made a legal determination for you, hasn't he? I mean, he's sitting there saying, oh, there's a person I can stop, right? Well, by just making that thought right there, he made a legal determination that you're a fictitious entity, and he has the right to stop you, because he doesn't have the right to stop you if you're not a person. And so he's made a legal determination for you, and then if you think about it further, how can he make a legal determination for you without representing you? That's what he's done. He represented you. Does he have authority to represent you? He doesn't, okay? But when you go and apply for this stuff, you're giving them permission. You're making them competent, and that's part of what they're doing.